What's up guys, Terminator 1, 2, and 2, and it's teaching day! Last episode in teaching you guys Yu-Gi-Mans, we learned about spell speeds, which is very important when trying to figure out what chain links are what. But now we got the basics down, it's time to start talking about some of the weird crap when talking about chains. So this is like Chain Links Part 2, the weakest link. We're going to split this video up into 3 parts, talking about timing, and therefore missing timing, simultaneous effects go on chain, which is actually relevant because that just changed for the TCG, as well as Mystical Space Typhoon, because it deserves its own slot. But anyway, let's get started. When talking about timing in Yu-Gi-Oh, we are talking about when cards activate. When a card meets its activation condition, normally when referring to a trigger or trigger-like effect, we have 2 options. Effects that do something if something happens, and effects that do something when something happens. The reason why we care is because certain cards can miss timing. This means that they try to activate to use their trigger-like effect, but because something else is happening at that instance, they fail to activate. This is important because when you are playing Yu-Gi-Ohs, you don't want to either cheat and assume you can do something you can't, or get cheated by your opponent because they're just telling you that, oh yeah, I can do that. No! Like I said before, there is 2 types of effects, ifs and whens, and even that's kind of murky because it really comes down to whether or not those effects are optional or not. If an effect is mandatory, it can't miss timing. Whether it says if or when, doesn't matter. If it says if this happens, do something, or when this happens, do something, it must be done. When we get into that muddy, missing timing area, it's when something says you can do something, making it optional. Someone like Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, can't miss timing, because if he goes to the graveyard, he can use his effect. That's just what Dante does. He can't miss timing because it's if. Something like a Yang Zing can miss timing because it says when you can. And the biggest way to understand this and why it works and why if and when are different, think about it like computer coding. If is asking a question, did it or did it not happen? Yes or no? If. When is asking a time, it's asking when did something happen. It's not the same question. If questions don't care whether or not something else had to happen first, if something happened, I can do this because, yeah, it happened if the question was answered. When, however, is asking for a time, and frankly, if something else happens, whens can miss timing if they are optional. If you destroy a Yang Zing monster with the card Soul Taker, that thing ain't getting any floats. Soul Taker is notorious for making other cards miss timing because it has 2 effects. The first effect, destroy the targeted monster. The second effect, give your opponent some life points. Or if you're playing Nurse Burn, burn him for some life points. Because the destruction effect has happened, the Yang Zing monster is trying to activate. But when it is trying to activate, something else happens, and that's the resolution of the rest of the effect and giving the life points. Therefore, now that the card's done, the Yang Zing's like, alright, well, I asked the question when, and when has gone, so sucks to be me. Another example of this that's a little less specific between 2 card interactions would be basically if you have a card that activates when another card is resolving as a Chain Link 2, and then there's still a Chain Link 1 left to resolve. Because there's still that Chain Link 1 left to resolve, the card that was when you can, that happened, tried to activate when the Chain Link 2 card resolved, it is now failed to activate because you got the Chain Link 1 that's still trying to do its thing. Part 2, simultaneous effects go on chain. What happens when 2 cards activate at the exact same time? The rules for simultaneous effects go on chain states that if 2 mandatory effects happen at the same time, the player gets to use theirs as Chain Link 1, the opponent gets to use theirs as Chain Link 2. And then if there's any optional effects that happened at the exact same time as the 2 mandatory effects, the turn player gets to activate theirs first, and then the next second mandatory effect, which was the opponent's, gets to activate theirs as the 4th. But what we really care about simultaneous effects going on chain is with the new TCG ruling dealing with when 2 of your own effects activate at the same time. Basically, if they're 2 mandatory effects and they're your own, you get to pick what order they go in. This is different from how the TCG used to rule it, and they kind of did it in the order in which they activated, even though they activated at the same time. For instance, if I have Sangan on board and I tribute it to summon a Ryza, the Sangan hit the grave before Ryza hit the field, so Sangan's Chain Link 1, Ryza's Chain Link 2. Even though, really, the tribute and summon is kind of the same action, so Whoever did the TCG ruling before this was an idiot. That makes no sense. They happen at the same time, so now the effects activate at the same time as they should. So going forward, we don't care about that crap. All we know is if you have a bunch of crap go off at once and they're all mandatory, you get to pick the order you want. And that's cool because you can bury effects under other effects to dodge your opponent's negation. If you have a spell and a monster activate at the same time, you can make the spell chain link 2 so that your opponent cannot activate something like Solemn Strike in order to destroy your monster to negate its effect. If you want a more in-depth thing, I'll put Cimo's video down in my description. He did a really good job on it. Before the video gets too long though, this is just an intro to all this crap, I want to go over Mystical Space Typhoon. Not just a meme about scrubs not knowing how the game works, it's actually a legitimate question that if you know anything about like the English language, why doesn't MST negate? Basically, it comes down to cards do not necessarily need to be on the field to resolve their effects. As long as they were activated on the field, and then it doesn't matter what happens to the card itself between the activation and the resolution, as long as it was activated on the field or in the graveyard or wherever it was appropriate to activate its effect, it can continue to do so. And this is precisely why you can't use Mystical Space Typhoon to negate the activation of Raigeki. Raigeki does not care that it was sent to the graveyard before it got to finish resolving. It activated on the field. It is a normal spell. That's how normal spells work. Now you could say, well, maybe MST doesn't negate it, but why does it still resolve? It should just fizzle. So the activation wasn't negated, but the effect was. Well, again, like I said, there is no stipulation for normal spells that need to be on the field in order to resolve their effects, save for one instance, and that is continuous spells and traps. Built into the idea and what it is to be a continuous spell or trap or continuous effect in general is they can only resolve their effects as long as they are on the field. They are while they are on the field. If they are off the field, they cease to function. So if I activate the continuous spell Fire Formation Tanky and I activate its effect in order to search let's say a Fire Fist Bear, you can activate MST in response to my Tanky, and then my Tanky does something they call resolves without effect. Its activation was not negated, however, its effect failed to resolve in the intended fashion because it is a continuous spell and must remain on the field in order to resolve, and because it was sent to the graveyard before it could resolve, it fails to resolve in the intended fashion. So MST does not negate continuous spells and traps or field spells or whip spells or whatever. It doesn't negate them. Stop saying that. It simply makes them resolve without effect. So this was a really quick one, guys. I just want to get this one out here to get to all the other questions you guys had from the last video all packaged away. And it's really hot in here, so if I seem a little agitated, it's not because I'm annoyed with the concept of what I'm speaking about. It's because it's really warm and these lights are really hot. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the video and what I should do next for the next episode. I think it's going to be an introduction to synchro summoning. However, if you guys have a more techie rule thing you'd like me to talk about first, let me know in the comments below. I really actually am curious what you guys want to hear me kind of try to attempt to explain to you. And remember, guys, if you don't troll the meta, who will? See, I gotta turn these lights off. Fuck.
Oh, hey losers. What are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. Wanna watch something else? Hurry up and choose one of these. Ugh. When are you gonna make a choice? This year would be nice.